Hades is a dungeon crawler hack and slash 'em up from Supergiant Games, creators of the excellent Bastion and Transistor. You take control of Zagreus, son of Hades, who's just fed up kicking around the underworld and has decided to take a trip above ground to Mount Olympus. Unfortunately for him, his father Hades has a rather dim view of the desire and has dispatched the forces of the underworld to stop him. If you liked either of Supergiant's previous offerings, then you're right at home here. It's your standard fare hack and slash with some flair. The flair being that the level design changes constantly with every attempt. Every time you die, you get returned to the house at the start to retool, upskill, get some story filler and try again. You basically have to one-shot the whole thing in order to get to the end. Along the way you'll battle hordes, bosses, dodge traps, receive gifts from the Olympian gods and other mythological figures. These can have various effects on your attacks, from making them stronger to giving them status effects like chain lightning or a debuff and so on.
And he's not so much as called in quite some time. You'll have a better home where you belong, here on Olympus. And to help you on your journey, have my blessing.
Lord Uncle Zeus lending his support. Never thought I'd see the day. Or night. Whenever.
The isometric top-down view grants a nice viewpoint as you guide Zagreus through the levels. The controls are quite simple, with the weapons having 3 attacks. A standard, a special and a dash attack, in addition to a cast spell that fires a red projectile outwards that sticks into enemies and has to be retrieved before it can be reused. All of these can be augmented or completely replaced by the gifts bestowed upon you throughout the game. The controls are fast and responsive and really lend well to the weighty feel of the combat. It's fast, flows very well, and mowing your way through groups of enemies is really satisfying. Each of the weapons has its own distinct feel to them and they all handle very differently. Your standard issue sword is a decent all-rounder, the spear is slower but will allow you to hit enemies from across the room with its special, the bow is, well, it's a bow, and features a charge shot. There's a shield you can use to block and bull rush, a set of armoured gauntlets that will give you a high combo attack, and an automatic rifle because, well, why the fuck not? Graphically, the game is superb, the mild cel shading effect is really well done and the animations are all very smooth. All the character models are fantastic with incredible levels of detail. There's less detailing on the enemy models and they can get a bit repetitive due to the amount of enemies this game will throw at you, but it's not an issue. Special praise must go to the brilliant dialogue portraits for each character. They're amazing. In my opinion, the artwork in Transistor was better, but they were going for a different feel here and I really like it. Whoever Supergiant have doing their art design are fucking miracle workers. The game so far features 4 distinct zones: Tartarus, Asphodel, Elysium and the Temple of Styx. As was said before, the level design is randomised with the amount and type of enemies changing from playthrough to playthrough. After clearing out the room, you'll be granted the bonus that room offered, and you'll sometimes have the option of choosing which boon to go for in the next room. The boons can be gifts from a specific god, or gemstones that can be used to spruce up your house or add stuff to the levels, or tokens called darkness, which is the currency you use to level up your abilities. Actual currency does exist too. It can be used to buy items off Charon the Boatman at select rooms throughout each zone. Unlike other currencies however, coins are all lost when you die, so hoarding them isn't always the best idea. So the main question about Hades is this: how can a game based around repetition, indeed is in fact dependent upon it, can be entertaining when the antithesis of entertainment is repetition? It's a curious conundrum the game designers are left with. The game has to be easy enough to get a decent chunk of the way through every play, but difficult enough so that you're not blowing through it every time regardless of your power-ups. But make it too difficult, and you'll risk undermining the gameplay, and players just won't bother. They'll see the difficulty as a sort of shitty band-aid over the lack of any proper game design. Plus it'd make it really boring. Thankfully, that's not much of an issue in Hades. The gameplay is entertaining enough that you'll want to play more after every death, and the levels, well, samey in some aspects of the design, aren't so similar to make the game feel like a particularly violent version of Groundhog Day. You'll get used to the enemies, but the design is detailed enough, not just in art, but in their attacks and movements, that you won't really be getting bored of them. I suppose that's the main plus in this. Supergiant have crafted a game that you'll play over and over again and you'll only get used to it. You won't really get bored. I have to make a special point here on the voice acting and writing. It's all brilliant. Also, the sheer amount of new dialogue and scenes I was encountering was amazing to me. Even on my 13th go around, I was still uncovering new stories and new layers to the existing ones. It really kept me invested in the goings on of hell and made the area seem real, and the gods seemed like a quite dysfunctional family more than a collection of malevolent beings, which, if you're into Greek mythology, you'll instantly recognise and enjoy.
Come on, Meg. Haven't we had more than enough of each other by now? Besides, don't you have someplace else to be?
Your father sent me. All in all, I'd rather be on your bad side than his. Now you can turn back, like a good little man, or I can send you home the pain.
I'll have to go with the painful way.
A man after my own heart.
I've brushed on the mythology aspect, so I'll spend a bit more time on it now. It's really well researched. All of the gods are correctly named and have their lineages correctly stated. You'd be quite surprised at how many games and programs get this wrong. As someone whose early childhood reading was spent completely nerding out on Greek and Roman mythology, I was delighted at the accuracy and depth of the research done on this. It's not a game without flaws. Some of the weapons aren't really well suited to the style of arena combat the game is built around, particularly the bow. It reduces the battles to prolonged games of running and pot-shotting the enemies as you can. Unfortunately, it does so little damage it stretches out each fight to interminable lengths, and that's just a normal fight. When it comes to the bosses, be prepared for some seriously tedious gameplay. Also, as you get further into the game, the number of spam attacks rises quite sharply, showing a lack of proper thought in the endgame enemies and attacks. Generally, you'll be dying to enemies as a result of an attack that you couldn't avoid, and the prevalence of these attacks as the game progresses is very noticeable. Enemies will either have charge attacks that you can't outrun, or area attacks that you can't dodge away from. The peak of this is the last boss fight with Hades himself, as he seems to have almost nothing but area spam attacks. There are a number of real dick moves in this game. The fact that your ranged weapons have a maximum range whereas the enemies can hit you from clear across the arena is one. The ending of the game being basically, oh, let's forget that happened and pretend you lost that boss fight, okay, before sending you right back to the start is another huge one. In fact, it was that ending that killed off a large part of my enthusiasm for replaying the game. But the later updates all promise more story and more dialogue, and the game is good enough that I'll return for some more. How much more can be added before it gets stale and dull is another question. There's a lot of diminishing returns on games like these and it can bite down quite fast. But so far, Hades is a fantastic little adventure that is well worth your time and money.
I'll kill you again and again and again.